He's known as the father of American literature, Mark Twain, whose wit and wisdom is as relevant today as ever. A new biography of the famed author is just out. Our Robert Costa gives us a read.
The Mississippi Valley is as tranquil and reposeful as dreamland, and has nothing this worldly about it, nothing to hang a fret or worry upon. It's a beautiful sentiment, and yet it contrasts with the fretful and worried life of the man who wrote those words, Samuel Clemens, known to the world by his pen name, Mark Twain.
If you go just a couple of blocks up Hill Street, you find Mark Twain's boyhood home.
Twain died 115 years ago, but his books are still being read and hotly debated around the globe. It's quite the legacy for a mischievous boy of modest means, raised here in Hannibal, Missouri.
He grew up with the Mississippi, the roaring Mississippi, just steps away. The world seemed to be at his fingertips.
That was the passageway to the world. Absolutely. It was the international highway of 1835.
Like your books.
Thank you very much.
Perhaps you guessed from the white suit and whiskers just who Hannibal native Jim Waddell is talking about.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Keep writing.
I intend to.
Waddell has portrayed Twain for 3 decades. A performance always in demand when Hannibal's streets are filled each spring for the Twain on Main Festival.
I can't eat with this white suit on.
It's a good gig in Hannibal, Missouri.
Yeah, it is.
And a few people want to do it.
Yeah, you know,
You got to keep it up. You got to have a clean white suit. You got to keep that mustache trimmed.
you keep the suit white by doing no work.
I love meeting the new people because there's 44 different countries that visited Hannibal last year.
Perhaps you recognize these literary figures as well. Tom Sawyer and Becky Thatcher, Corbin Asbury and Ainsley Aarons competed against other 8th graders in town to represent the characters here in Hannibal.
Are you surprised that some author who lived years ago still seems so relevant to all these people who come to Hannibal?
I am, but not really, because his words that he said, they still work with us today. They're wise words.
Wise words with more than a touch of humor. Always do right. This will gratify some people and astonish the rest. Readers suppose you were an idiot, and suppose you were a member of Congress. But I repeat myself.
Twain said he was not just an American, he was
the American.
the American.
I think that part of the continuing fascination with Mark Twain is that he combines in his person both the best and the worst of our national culture. Twain really was born in the American heartland. In fact,
Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer Ron Chernow has chronicled the lives of great Americans, perhaps most famously Alexander Hamilton, whose biography spawned the Broadway musical. Chernow's latest tackles the life of Twain, a figure who has never left the national spotlight.
Twain didn't necessarily want a biography of him being written. He once wrote, "Biographies are but the clothes and buttons of the man. The biography of him," he said, "cannot be written. But you have clearly carried on."
right, and that line was in my head every single day that I worked on this book. I kind of have this image of Mark Twain coming back to life and saying, "I told you so."
Chernow traces Twain's sardonic humor to the pain in which it was rooted. Although he enjoyed boyhood adventures that would inspire Tom Sawyer, his father was a failure in business. The fear of poverty and an anxious pursuit of wealth would dominate Twain's adult life.
What do you see in this house that others might miss?
I see his personality. All the angles and porches and turrets, it's like all of the different sides of his personality. And he always loved conspicuousness, and this was probably the most conspicuous house in the city.
We spoke with Chernow at the sprawling mansion Twain built in Hartford, Connecticut.
Was Mark Twain happy here?
No, he was happy here. It was far and away the happiest 17 years of his life. It was this, idyllic period. He had this large, somewhat eccentric house. He had a rich and gorgeous wife. He had 3 beautiful and smart daughters. It was really a charmed life.
Although Twain became wealthy as a writer and public speaker, he poured his fortune and his wife's into ill-fated investments. The most notorious was the Page Compositor, a typesetting machine that Twain was sure would make him millions.
The themes that run through Twain's life and his work, politics, corruption, money, class, race, get-rich-quick schemes, all seems quite relevant to America today.
Yeah, it's a great American story. And I think that there's so many things that he said, for instance, about politics that really resonate today. One line that used to drive him crazy was, my country, right or wrong. You know, he said that we should support our country always and our government when it deserves it.
Would President Trump be a familiar figure to Twain?
I think that President Trump would be a familiar figure to the extent that one of the great stock characters in Mark Twain's fiction is the salesman. You could see it in President Trump. You could see it in so many different figures in American life, the big talkers, the big shots.
It's no small irony that Twain was nothing if not a big shot himself, a man who craved attention as much as money. But fame also emboldened Twain to speak truth to power, most enduringly through his masterpiece, Huckleberry Finn.
One of the things that I argue in my book was that there was no white author in the late 19th century who engaged more fully and I think more affectionately with the black community than Twain. Now, I have to point out, early on, if you read letters that he wrote when he was a teenager, they're full of crude racist remarks, and not only about blacks. It seems like just about everybody. By the time, you know, in the 1880s, he publishes Huck Finn, which, whatever its imperfections, is still, I think, the great anti-slavery novel in the language.
For Ron Chernow, Mark Twain is still a vital presence in American life. His words continue to make us think, and almost certainly laugh.
Why do the works of Twain endure when so many of the great authors of the past, their books are sitting dusty on the shelves of American libraries and schools?
I think it's a very, very good question. You know, he likened a fine literature to wine, and he said, my writing is water. He said, but everyone drinks water.
Everyone drinks water. They're still drinking water.
They're still
reading Twain.
They're still reading Twain.